I am Claire Hartley. I am 30 years old. I am an emergency medical technician. And on this cold Sunday morning, I was hiding in a graveyard, crouching behind a stone angel with a chipped wing, spying on my own funeral. The bells of St. Michael Church began to toll, a heavy, bronze sound that vibrated through the damp air. 7 o'clock. I counted my pulse against the clanging. It was too fast, a frantic bird beating against my ribs. I should have been miles from here, starting a 12-hour shift in Chicago proper. I should have been checking the seals on the trauma kits or laughing at my partner's bad jokes. My job is saving lives. I work for the 911 service. But here I was, in St. Michael Cemetery, waiting to see if a ghost story was true. The rumor was simple, insane, and persistent. It said that Luca Santori, the head of the entire Santori outfit, the man whose name was only ever whispered by police and newspapers, brought flowers to my grave every Sunday. White roses. My grave, the thought still had the power to make me want to laugh or throw up. A polished granite headstone, courtesy of the federal government, declared that Claire Hartley, beloved daughter, rested here. It was a lie. I was right here, maybe 12 meters away, with cold mud seeping into the knees of my jeans and my breath fogging in front of my face. A vehicle turned into the cemetery gates, silent as a shark. It was not a hearse. It was a black sports utility vehicle, enormous, with windows so dark they looked like polished obsidian. It whispered of bulletproof panels and a reinforced chassis. It rolled to a stop on the gravel path. I pressed myself tighter against the angel. The cold marble was unyielding against my back. 3 men emerged first. They did not slam the doors. They closed them with a soft, heavy thud. They were bodyguards, and they fanned out instantly, their movements economical and terrifying. They wore dark suits, but they did not look like lawyers. Their eyes scanned the mist-shrouded trees, the rows of monuments, the iron fence. Their hands were visible. They were not holding phones. Then he got out. Luca Santori. I had only seen him once before, and I had not known who he was. Now, I saw the man from the grainy courthouse photographs, the man the rumors were about. He was tall, dressed in a dark wool suit that probably cost more than my car. He looked nothing like the monster I had imagined. He just looked tired. There was an exhaustion etched into the skin around his eyes, a weariness that went bone deep. He looked like a man who had not slept in a very, very long time. He moved toward the headstone. My headstone, when he was not wearing gloves. His hands were bare. In one hand, he carried a bouquet. It was massive, and they were white roses, just as the rumor had promised. He stopped in front of the granite. He stood there for a long time, just looking at my name. The 3 bodyguards formed a loose, watchful triangle around him, facing outward. They were the perimeter. He was the center. I watched him. I studied him. I tried to reconcile this image, this quiet man grieving in the dawn, with the man who controlled half the city's underbelly. The wind shifted, and I smelled the cold, clean scent of the roses, even from where I hid. Then he bent slightly. He placed the enormous bouquet at the base of the stone. His shoulders slumped. Just for a second, and he spoke. I could not hear the words clearly. He was whispering, a low murmur. It sounded like Italian, a soft, rhythmic string of words directed at the polished stone. It sounded like an apology. He was apologizing to a dead woman. He was apologizing to me for a death I was currently faking. The bitter irony of it all rose in my throat, hot and acidic. I saw something on the bouquet, tucked into the white silk ribbon that bound the roses. There was something dark, a ring, a simple dark band, tied securely, a clue. I needed it. My hand moved, pulling my phone from my coat pocket. My fingers were numb, clumsy with cold. I shielded the screen with my body, turning the brightness all the way down. No flash, never a flash. I held my breath, angled the phone around the angel's wing, and stood on my toes. I tapped the screen. Zoom. Focus. Click. I took 3 pictures, just to be sure. A close-up of the man, a close-up of the flowers, and a close-up of that strange ring on the ribbon. A beam of light sliced through the gray morning. I dropped, my heart stopping, then restarting with a painful jolt. One of the bodyguards, the one nearest my angel, was sweeping a small, powerful flashlight across the statues. The beam passed directly over the spot where my head had been seconds before. It illuminated the chipped marble wing, then moved on. I was on the ground, flat on my stomach in the mud. I bit my lip to keep from screaming, tasting the metallic tang of my own blood. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like a siren in my chest, a Code 3 ambulance siren. I had a sudden, hysterical thought, my own empty grave, and it felt like a mousetrap. Then, a real siren wailed in the distance, growing closer. It was not an ambulance. It was police. A Cook County Sheriff's car, lights flashing, sped past the cemetery gates on the main road. Luca Santori did not flinch. He did not even look startled. He just lifted his head, his gaze following the sound until it faded. He slowly, deliberately, smoothed the lapel of his suit vest, a simple gesture, as if he were brushing off the entire outside world. That tired smile touched his lips again. It was not a smile of joy, or even relief. It was a smile of pure, unending resignation. He looked back at my headstone. He whispered one word. Domenica? Sunday? He said it like an oath, like a promise, or maybe like a curse. And that one word, that man's face, the wail of the siren, it all combined. My throat closed. The cold mud under me seemed to dissolve, and I was not in the cemetery anymore. The memory hit me like a physical blow. It was not a gentle recollection. It was a flashback, bright and brutal as a camera flash, the hospital parking lot, the smell of concrete and coppery blood, the air thick with the acrid stench of gunpowder. It was not a memory. It was a haunting. It flashed in my head like a broken neon sign. Blood, the gleam of metal, the sound, the terrible wet sounds. I felt the nausea from that night rise in my throat all over again. I squeezed my eyes shut, pushing the bile back down. A sudden sound, a snap, a twig breaking. My eyes flew open. The bodyguard, the same one with the flashlight, had taken a few steps toward my hiding place. His head was tilted. He had heard me. He had heard my gasp, or my choked attempt not to be sick. His flashlight beam cut through the air again, sharp and white, sweeping directly toward me. I flattened myself against the earth. I did not breathe. The cold mud was a shock, soaking through my jeans, through my coat, chilling me to the bone. It was real. This was not a memory. This was happening. Half of me, the stupid, terrified, angry half, wanted to jump up. I wanted to stand in the path of that light and scream. Why? Why are you here? Why are you mourning me? What did I ever do to you? The other half, the smart half, the half that had survived the last few months, knew I had to disappear. The witness security program. The federal agents had been very clear. Become a ghost. Do not contact anyone. Do not go back. I was failing. I was a terrible ghost. The beam swept over my hiding spot, lingered on the chipped angel, and then, mercifully, swept away. The guard grunted, unconvinced, but returned to his position. I could not stay. My heart was a drum against the muddy ground. I had to leave. I pushed backward, on my hands and knees, slowly, painfully. I did not dare stand. I moved from the shadow of the angel to the deep gloom of a row of cypress trees. Their branches were low, scraping against my back, pulling at my hair. But they were cover. I felt like an animal, crawling away, retreating through the rows of the dead. I reached the outer fence, a tall barrier of cold iron. I risked one last look back. He was still there, Luca Santori, a dark, solitary figure standing vigil over a block of empty granite. His 3 bodyguards were still in their positions, statues of loyalty. I had the pictures. I had the proof. The rumor was true. But the proof only gave me 1,000 more questions. I slipped through a gap in the fence I knew from my childhood, and I made a promise to myself. The cold mud on my skin was a testament. The fear still thrumming in my veins was a vow. Next week? Next Sunday. I would not just watch. The question burned in my mind, hotter than the cold air in my lungs. Why? Why would a man like Luca Santori, the head of the outfit, a man shrouded in violence and shadow, come every single Sunday to cry over the grave of a stranger? Why would he mourn an emergency medical technician he had never even met? I started walking, my legs shaking, as the bells of St. Michael began to toll the half hour. My boots slid on the wet pavement as I walked, but I did not feel the cold anymore. The mud on my knees had started to stiffen, a gritty, icy shell. My mind was not on the graveyard. It was back in Chicago, at County General, 3 months ago. It had been a late shift, the kind of night where the air in the emergency bay is thick with the smell of stale coffee, antiseptic, and desperation. My partner and I had just wheeled in a drunk driver, cuffed to the gurney, when the call came over the radio. Multiple gunshots, a parking garage, 3 blocks away. We were the closest unit. We arrived before the police. The garage was a concrete cavern, eerily quiet. Then we saw them. The scene was chaos, a tableau of violence. 2 expensive black sedans were angled strangely. Doors open, we went to work. Triage. My partner took a man slumped over a steering wheel. I went to the one on the ground. He was alive, barely. A massive chest wound. The blood was dark and frighteningly plentiful, soaking through his expensive overcoat. I did not have time to wonder who he was. He was just my patient. "Stay with me, Bao," I said, my voice automatically shifting into that calm, commanding tone we all learn. "I am Claire. I am an emergency medical technician. We are going to take care of you." I was trying to get a pressure dressing on the wound. My partner was calling in the vitals. The man's eyes fluttered open. They were dark, and even in his fading consciousness, they were intelligent. He was trying to breathe, a horrible, wet, gasping sound. He smelled of gunpowder and something else, something expensive, like old leather and spice. He reached out. His hand was huge, and even though he was bleeding out, it felt hot. He grabbed my forearm, his grip shockingly strong. He is, he whispered. His voice was a low rasp, thick with a heavy Italian accent, but the words were English. He was looking past me. "Do not talk," I commanded, trying to apply pressure. "You need to save your strength." He shook his head. A tiny, agonizing movement. His eyes were locked on something. I saw a scar, a thin white line that ran from his knuckle to his wrist. His grip tightened on my arm. He was not grabbing me for help. He was grabbing me to hold me still. He was trying to warn me. Then the parking lot exploded for the second time that night. It was not a bomb. It was a confrontation. 2 more cars, a different set, screeched into the garage. Men piled out, shouting. They were not paramedics. My phone, clipped to my belt for the hospital comms, went off. It was a text alert. In my panic, fumbling to silence it, my glove-covered thumb hit the wrong button. My phone was in my hand, and in the sudden, blinding flash of headlights, I accidentally hit the camera. The flash went off, not once, but 5, 6, 7 times. A burst of photographs illuminating the entire scene. I had just painted a target on myself. The shooting started instantly. It was loud, deafening, the sound amplified by the concrete. I dropped, pulling my gurney down, shielding the patient with my own body, a futile, instinctive gesture. Bullets pinged off the concrete pillars. Glass shattered. When it stopped, 6 more men were down. And then, the sirens. Not just one. All of them. Chicago Police, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, the FBI. The entire parking garage was flooded with blue and red lights in under 2 minutes. My patient, the man with the scar, was unconscious. His hand had finally gone limp on my arm. That was the night I died. They pulled me into a sterile interrogation room, not at the police precinct, a federal building. The man who spoke to me was named Agent Pike. He was all smooth efficiency, with a face that looked like it had never smiled and never cried. He showed me my own photographs, the ones my phone had taken. In the garish, overexposed light of my flash, I had captured everything: faces, guns, the license plate of a car that should not have been there. I wasn't just a witness, I was the star witness. Agent Pike explained it to me. The men in the garage were not just small-time gangs, it was the Santori outfit and the Bratva, the Russian Brotherhood, and I had pictures of a meeting gone wrong. "You cannot go home, Miss Hartley," he said, his voice flat. "They know your face. You lit yourself up like a Christmas tree." He offered me the Witness Security Program, WITSEC, a new life, a new name, total protection. I refused. I had a life. I had a brother. "Your brother," Evan, Pike said, flipping a page in his folder. "United States Navy, currently deployed. What do you think happens to him when they find out you are the witness? They will not be able to reach him on his ship. So they will wait for him. Or they will find a way to send a message." He had me. The thought of Evan, my smart, brave little brother, getting hurt because of me. It was unthinkable. So I agreed. 2 days later, Claire Hartley was officially, and very publicly, killed. A fiery car crash on Interstate 94, a burned-out chassis, a dental record match, so sad, so final. The federal government is very good at funerals when it wants to be. They flew me north, far north, to a small, isolated cabin in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. It was beautiful, in a lonely, cold sort of way. I was Hannah, a writer on a sabbatical. My handler, a nervous young agent named Miller, checked in once a week. The loneliness was a physical weight. The silence was deafening. I was used to a 12-hour shift filled with sirens, shouting, the rhythmic beep of heart monitors. Here, the only sound was the wind and the endless, whispering fall of snow. I counted snowflakes to try to sleep. I would lie in the small bed, staring out the window, and count. 1, 2, 3. I would imagine Evan safe on his ship, and I would feel a wave of guilt so profound it almost choked me. He thought I was dead. I had died, and I had not even been able to tell him I loved him one last time. I was a ghost, haunted by the sound of sirens that were not there. This went on for 2 months. I was safe, I was miserable, and then Agent Miller missed his check-in. I did not panic, not at first, but 2 days later, a different agent called. He said Miller had been in an accident, a slip on the ice downstate. He was in a coma. My new handler would be in touch. My blood went cold. The next call came 3 days later. It was not my new handler. It was a staticky, official-sounding voice. "Miss Hartley, this is a priority extraction. Your location has been compromised. A helicopter is inbound. Estimated time of arrival. 30 minutes. We need you to pack 1 bag and light a flare at the designated landing zone." I looked out the window. The snow was coming down hard, a horizontal blizzard. The wind was howling from the northwest. "What is your flight corridor?" I asked, my voice calm. The man paused. "What?" "Your flight corridor. And what is your approach vector, given the wind shear from the northwest?" Another pause. "Ma'am, just light the flare. We're coming from the south." I hung up the phone. As an emergency medical technician, I know flight crews. I know helicopters. No rescue helicopter in Michigan would fly in this blizzard, and if they were insane enough to try, they would never approach from the south. Not with a 90-mile-per-hour crosswind from the northwest. They would be shredded. It was a lie. Miller's accident mode. The compromised location. They were not coming to rescue me. They were coming to bury me. There was a leak. The entire program was a lie. I did not pack a bag. I took my go bag, the one I keep for emergencies, the one with cash, a water filter, and a first aid kit. I put on 3 layers of clothes. The old, beat-up Chevrolet the program had given me was in the shed. I had been studying the local maps, the ones for the Forestry Service. The main roads would be watched, but the logging roads, the ones that snaked through the national forest, they would be empty. I put the Chevrolet in gear and I drove. I drove for 2 days, never going above 40 miles an hour, navigating by the sun and the paper maps. I slept in the car, the cold so bitter my teeth ached. I ended up in a small town in Wisconsin. I found a public library. No, too traceable. I found a small greasy internet cafe. I paid the man at the counter $10 in cash for 1 hour of computer time. My hands were shaking. I was a ghost, but someone was hunting me. I had to know why. I am not a computer expert, but I know how to search. I know what medics talk about, and some medics, the ones who work in the bad parts of town, know about the dark web. I felt my way through it, like a blind person navigating a new house. It was terrifying. I found forums for things I did not want to believe existed. And then I found the bounty. It was not hard to find, not if you knew the right names to search. Baranov, Santori. It was a contract, $10 million. But the contract was not for my death. It was for the person who successfully killed Claire Hartley. It was a reward, and there was a second part, a bonus, and for the elimination of the Bratva members responsible for the parking garage incident. Someone was paying $10 million to the person who had, supposedly, already killed me, and he was also paying to have the men who attacked me, the Russians, hunted down and killed. The contract was signed with a single name, a name that meant nothing to me at the time. Domenica. I stared at the screen. Domenica. Sunday. I left the internet cafe, my heart pounding a new, terrifying rhythm. I was not just a witness. I was a prize. Someone thought I was dead, and he was avenging me, violently. I drove south, back toward the one place they would never expect me to go. Back to Chicago. I lived in the shadows. I stayed in cash, only motels. I watched the news. And that is when I saw his face. It was a small article, a charity donation to a church, a man in a dark suit, looking tired. The caption read, "Luca Santori attends a community fundraiser." I remembered the face. I remembered the scar on his hand, the accent, the smell of gunpowder. My patient, the man who had grabbed my arm, the man I had shielded with my body, was Luca Santori. And the name of the bounty, Domenica, Sunday. It all clicked into place, a horrible, perfect, terrifying piece of logic. The man bringing white roses to my grave every Sunday was the man I had tried to save, the man whose life I had, inadvertently, ruined by taking those pictures. He was Luca Santori, and he, under the name Domenica, was the one who had put a $10 million bounty on my killer. He was mourning me. He was avenging me, and he had no idea that I was alive. I spent the next 6 days as a ghost with a mission. I moved from one cash motel to another, never staying in the same place twice. I ate cold food from convenience stores. I watched the clock. My entire existence focused on one single point in time, 7 o'clock, next Sunday. I bought a new phone, a cheap burner, and I took the pictures from my old one, the close-ups of the ring on the ribbon. I zoomed in until the image was a mess of pixels, but the name was clear. I did not recognize it. It was not his. It was not mine. It was a clue I could not understand. When the morning came, I was ready. I did not go back to my apartment. I went to the closet of a charity thrift store. I found what I was looking for. An old, faded coat. It was not warm, but it was familiar. It was one of my old jackets, the one I must have donated years ago. I slipped it on. It was tight in the shoulders, and it carried a faint, sharp smell that made my eyes water. Peroxide, the smell of the ambulance, the smell of my old life. It felt like armor. It felt like a good luck charm. I was at St. Michael's Cemetery an hour before dawn. This time, I did not hide behind the angel. I hid in the trees, a thicket of cypress that gave me a clear view, but better cover. I was not just here to watch. I was here to intersect. The air was still, cold and wet. The mist clung to the grass. At 6:55, the bells began to chime. At 7 o'clock, the black sports utility vehicle arrived, just as I knew it would. It was a perfect repeat, the same silent arrival, the same 3 bodyguards fanning out, their hands visible, their eyes scanning the fog. Luca Santori emerged. He wore the same dark, expensive wool suit. He carried the same impossible burden of exhaustion on his shoulders, and in his hand he held a new bouquet, white roses, fresh, perfect, wrapped in silk. He walked to the headstone, my headstone. He stood there, a statue of grief. The scene was identical, and that was my cue. I knew his routine. He did not know mine. I took one deep breath. The peroxide smell filled my lungs. I was not Hannah, the writer from Michigan. I was not the ghost in the machine. I was Claire Hartley, emergency medical technician, and I was walking off the job. I stepped out of the trees. I walked on the wet grass, my boots making no sound. I did not run. I walked, my pace steady, my hands visible at my sides. One of the bodyguards saw me first. His eyes widened, just a fraction. He did not shout. He moved, his hand dropping to his weapon. "Stop," I said. My voice cut through the damp air. It was loud, clear, and steady. All three guards turned. Their movements were a blur. They did not pull their guns. Not yet, but their hands were on them. Luca Santori did not move. He did not turn. He just froze. His back was to me. I stopped about 20 feet away from him, close enough to be heard, far enough to respect the men who were deciding whether or not to kill me. "You are visiting the wrong graves," I said, my voice ringing with a strength I did not know I had. "The person you are mourning, she is not in there. The person buried in that box never even breathed." The sound was sharp, metallic, and terrifying. 3 guns, 3 safeties clicking off in perfect, practiced unison. The 3 bodyguards now had their weapons drawn, all pointed directly at my chest. Luca Santori still did not turn. His body was rigid. He did not look at me. He just spoke, his voice low, rough, and aimed at the granite stone in front of him. He repeated a sentence I had not heard in 3 months, a sentence I had, in fact, spoken. "Do not die before I get the line in." It was the last thing I had said to him in that parking garage, as I was trying to start an intravenous line, as he was grabbing my arm, as the world was exploding. My breath hitched. He remembered. Only then, after he had spoken those words into the air, did he turn. He turned slowly. His eyes, I had only seen them when they were clouded with pain, fading into shock. Now they were clear, dark, and utterly, terrifyingly intense. He was not looking at a ghost. He was looking at a fact, a problem, a miracle. He studied my face, my eyes, my old jacket. He was putting the pieces together, and he was the only other person on earth who had them all. "You," he whispered. It was not a question. "Me," I confirmed. "They are all dead," he said, his voice flat. "The men from the garage, the Bratva. I made sure—" "You missed some," I said, my heart hammering. "And you paid a reward for a job that was never finished. I was not killed. I was buried by the federal government." He processed this. The muscle in his jaw tightened. "Who?" "That is the problem," I said. "I do not know, but I'm out of options. The program that was supposed to protect me tried to have me killed. The men you are fighting want me dead. And you are here, bringing flowers to an empty hole in the ground." "What do you want?" he asked. This was it, the precipice. "I have 2 choices for you. Option 1, you help me find the leak in the Federal Bureau investigation, the person who sold me to the Bratva. You give me the resources to expose them. And then, you help me disappear. For real this time. A new identity, far away from Chicago, far away from all of this." He watched me, his face unreadable. "And option 2. Option 2, I said, is that you protect me, right here in Chicago. You keep me alive, breathing and healthy, until I can stand in a courtroom and testify against Oleg Baranov, against the men who shot you, and against the federal agent who betrayed me. I give them the truth, and then I leave." Luca Santori held my gaze. The silence stretched. The bodyguards had not moved. Their guns were still trained on me. He gave that same tired smile I had seen last week, the smile of pure, unending resignation. "I choose option 3, he said softly. I frowned. "I did not give you an option 3. "I keep you alive," he said, taking a step toward me. The guards tensed, but he lifted a hand, a tiny gesture, and they held their positions. "I keep you alive, Claire Hartley, long enough for you to choose again." Before I could answer, before I could process what that meant, another sound cut through the air. Sirens, but they were not the distant wail of a police car. This was different. This was close. A black sedan, an unmarked government car, screeched to a halt at the cemetery gates, blocking the path. Two more followed. Men in dark suits and windbreakers piled out. They were not mobsters. They were agents. A woman stepped out of the lead car. She was tall, with dark hair pulled back into a severe bun. She wore a practical suit and an expression of pure iron. She was all business. "Claire Hartley," she shouted, her voice booming across the graveyard. "Step away from him. You are a federal witness. You are to come with us now." Luca did not look at her. He just looked at me. "Your protectors." "My betrayers," I whispered, my blood turning to ice. I recognized the woman, Agent Catherine Walsh. She was Pike's superior. She was the one who had signed off on my death. "You are compromised, Miss Hartley," Walsh yelled, advancing with 3 agents. "We are taking you back into the witness security program." "No," I shouted back. "The program is compromised. Pike tried to have me killed." "Agent Pike is a respected agent," Walsh snapped. "You are coming with us, now." "She is not going anywhere." Luca's voice was quiet, but it carried. Walsh stopped. She finally looked at him. "Luca Santori, you are interfering with a federal witness. You can be charged." Luca smiled. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and dialed a number. He did not even look at it. "Naya," he said into the phone. "St. Michael's Cemetery. We have an issue with the FBI. And call Father Romano. Tell him I need him to bless a new arrangement." He hung up. He looked at me. "They cannot take you if you are not theirs to take." It happened fast. Within 10 minutes, 2 more cars arrived. One was a sleek black sedan, and a woman I'd never seen before got out. She was young, sharp, and carried a briefcase that looked like it could stop a bullet. The other was a simple priest's car, and an old man with white hair and a kind face emerged, looking confused but resolute. The lawyer, Naya Cortez, walked straight up to Agent Walsh. "Agent Walsh, I am Naya Cortez. I represent Mr. Santori. I am also, as of this moment, representing Miss Claire Hartley. Is my client under arrest?" Walsh looked furious. "She is a witness in federal protection. A program from which she just fled, claiming an attempt on her life by one of your agents," Naya Cortez countered smoothly. "She is, at this moment, a private citizen, standing in a public place. She has just retained me as counsel. She will not be answering any questions, and she will not be going anywhere with you." "This is a matter of national security," Walsh blustered. The old priest, Father Romano, stepped forward. "Agent, please, this young woman looks terrified. She's clearly in spiritual distress. She has requested my guidance. I am offering her the sanctuary of the church until this can be sorted out." It was a brilliant, ridiculous, perfect trap. Here was Agent Walsh, with her federal agents trying to forcibly drag a woman away, while a high-powered lawyer and a beloved local priest physically stood in her way. It was a public relations nightmare. Walsh knew it. She looked at me, her eyes filled with frustrated rage. "You are making a terrible mistake, Miss Hartley. You are choosing the man who started the war over the people trying to end it." "The people trying to end it sent me to a cabin with a leaky helicopter," I said, my voice shaking. "I am staying here." Walsh stared at me for a long, hard second, then she nodded. "Fine, but you are no longer our witness. You are on your own." She turned, her agents falling in around her. They got back in their cars, and they were gone. The silence that fell was heavy. It was just me, Luca Santori, his 3 guards, his lawyer, and the priest. "Well," Naya Cortez said, smoothing her suit, "that was bracing, Father. Thank you for your time." The priest nodded to Luca. "My son, you are walking a complicated path." "She is the one who is complicated, Father," Luca said, his eyes never leaving me. The lawyer and the priest left. We were alone again. Just me and the mob. "So," I said, my knees finally starting to shake, We have a new goal. Find the leak, find Oleg Baranov, and prepare my testimony." "We," Luka said, "have a goal." "I have a rule," I said, finding my footing. "If I do this, if I stay, one rule, no civilian casualties, no innocent bystanders. I do not want families or children or random people getting hurt in this war. I am a paramedic. I save people. I will not be the reason they get buried." He looked at me, a long, searching look. "We have a clinic in the neighborhood. We offer free services, no questions asked. We fund a scholarship at the local school for kids who cannot get aid. Kindness, Miss Hartley, is its own form of power. I do not hurt civilians. I protect my community." "Good," I said, "because I am your community now, whether you like it or not." He nodded. "We have an agreement." "We have a truce," I corrected. "A truce," he agreed. He looked at the white roses, still on the ground near my headstone. "We have one more problem. The world thinks you are dead. It needs to stay that way. It is the only thing keeping you safe. My people are hunting the Bratva for killing you. The FBI thinks you are a rogue agent or worse. Let them all believe the lie." He bent down and picked up the bouquet. He walked to the grave, and he placed the white roses gently at the base. "So, every Sunday," he said, straightening up, "I will still come. I will still bring the flowers. I will still mourn the ghost." "And what will I be doing?" I asked. He turned back to me, and for the first time, that exhaustion seemed to lift, replaced by something else, something harder. "You," Luca Santori said, "will be learning how to shoot, and you will keep your right to say no. This is not a capture, Miss Hartley. It is an alliance. You are free to walk away at any time, but if you walk away alone." My new life was divided into two distinct parts, the world before sundown and the world after. My days were spent in the basement of St. Michael's. The church was old, built by Italian immigrants 100 years ago, and its foundations were deep. Below the sacristy, past the boiler room, was a long, concrete tunnel. It had been a bootlegger's escape route during Prohibition. Now, it was my firing range. My instructor was Father Romano. The kind-faced, white-haired priest from the cemetery was, it turned out, a former military chaplain with a marksman's badge. He was also, apparently, Luca's oldest friend. "You are holding it like you are afraid of it, child," he said, his voice echoing in the stone room. He gently adjusted my grip on the 9mm handgun. It was heavy, cold, and felt alien in my hand. "A weapon is a tool, Claire, like your stethoscope. It is the intent behind it that matters. You must respect it, not fear it. Now, breathe out, squeeze, do not pull." I fired. The sound was deafening. The gun bucked in my hand, and the bullet hit the dirt pile at the far end of the tunnel, nowhere near the paper target. The smell of cordite was sharp, stinging my nose, reminding me of the parking garage. "Again, Todd," he said patiently. I spent hours down there. I learned to clean the weapon, to load a magazine in the dark, to clear a jam. I learned to control my breathing, to see the target, to make the tool an extension of my will. Father Romano was a terrifyingly good teacher. He looked like a gentle grandfather, but he could put 9 rounds into a 3-inch circle from 50 feet. He shot, as he said, like breathing. I shot like I was having an asthma attack, but I was learning. My nights were for my other education. Luca had given me a room, a secure office, in the back of a coffee importing warehouse. It was anonymous, warm, and it smelled like roasted beans and burlap. He had given me a new laptop, one that ran on a closed network, and a stack of files. "This is everything my people have on Baranov," he had said, placing the box on the desk. "And this," he added, handing me a thumb drive, "is everything we have on your friends at the FBI." I worked with the same methodical focus I used for triage. I was an emergency medical technician. My job was to assess, analyze, and act based on data. I applied that logic now. I had my old ambulance logs, the ones I had backed up to a personal cloud drive years ago. My entire career, every call, every route, every timestamp. I began a new kind of triage. I cross-referenced my logs with the dates of known shootings between the Santori outfit and the Bratva. A pattern emerged. I saw the locations of the shootings, then I looked at the data Luca's team had gathered on the FBI's movements. On 3 separate occasions, a major firefight had broken out, and on all 3 occasions, my ambulance had been routed by a last-minute change from dispatch to a different call, a minor incident, blocks away, just minutes before the shooting started. Someone was making sure I was not a witness. Someone was clearing the field. Then, I looked at the night of the parking garage. My team was not supposed to be there. We were called because we were the closest unit. We were not diverted. Why? I pulled up the dispatch logs for that night, and I saw it. The call for the drunk driver that had pulled us back to County General, the one that made us available for the garage shooting. That call had been placed by a burner phone that was later recovered from a federal agent's desk. Agent Pike? The same Agent Pike who had so calmly offered me a new life. He had not just found a witness, he had created one. He had maneuvered my ambulance into the line of fire. He had set me up, knowing the garage was a volatile meat, hoping the flash of my camera would capture the evidence he needed. He had put me in harm's way. And then he had rescued me. And when I became a liability, he had sent the helicopter. The leak was not just a leak, it was the source. I showed my findings to Luca. He looked at the screen for a long time, his face carved from stone. "He used you," Luca said, his voice quiet. "He used you as bait." "He's not the only one I'm worried about." I said, "He's one agent. This feels bigger." "It is," Luca agreed. "We will find the rest." He closed the laptop. "That is enough for tonight. You need to eat." He did not ask me. He told me. He took me out of the warehouse, and we walked. Little Italy was alive. Even in the cold, string lights were hung between the buildings. The smell of garlic and baking bread was everywhere. He led me to a small, unassuming restaurant, the kind of place with red checkered tablecloths and Chianti bottles holding candles. The entire restaurant knew him. They called him Luca, not Mr. Santori. They treated him with a deep, quiet respect. It was not fear. It was affection. He was funding a new community center. He had paid for someone's grandmother's surgery. He was, as he had said, protecting his community. He led me to a table in the back. It was a community dinner, a fundraiser for the scholarship fund he had mentioned. He was donating anonymously, but he was also here, present, listening to the people. An old man at the table next to us started coughing. It was not a simple cough. It was a deep, racking, wet sound. He was struggling for breath, his face turning a dusky gray. Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. I recognized it instantly. "He needs his nebulizer," a woman, probably his daughter, said in a panic. I was out of my chair before I had even thought about it. "I'm a paramedic," I said, my voice calm. "Sir, I need you to look at me. Breathe with me. In, out." I turned to the daughter. "Where is his medication?" "He forgot it." She cried. I looked at the man. His lips were blue. "I did not have my kit. Do you have a rescue inhaler albuterol?" He shook his head, wheezing. "Luca," I said, not looking away from the man. "I need a hospital. Now." Luca was already on his feet, but he was not calling an ambulance. He was walking to the bar. He spoke to the bartender. A quick, low sentence. The bartender nodded, disappeared, and returned a second later, not with a phone, with a small, black bag. Luca brought it to me. I opened it. It was a full medic kit. Not as good as the one in my ambulance, but it had what I needed, a portable nebulizer, vials of medicine. "How?" I whispered, my hands already working, prepping the treatment. "Our clinic," he said simply. "We keep kits in the neighborhood." I put the mask on the old man's face. The fine mist of medication began to flow. I held his hand. "Just breathe, sir. You are doing great. Just breathe." We sat there, me and Luca, at a table in a small restaurant. While I administered emergency medical treatment, the chemistry between us was not about danger. It was not about the guns or the secrets. In that moment, it was about this, a shared, quiet understanding. He had provided the tools. I had provided the skill. Together, we had saved a man from suffocating. When the old man was breathing normally, his color returned. I packed up the kit. The daughter was crying, thanking me. Luca just watched me, his dark eyes holding an expression I could not read. It was not just gratitude. It was understanding. He saw me, the real me, not the ghost, not the witness, the paramedic. The quiet did not last. 2 days later, we were driving. Luca was driving his black sports utility vehicle, and I was in the passenger seat. We were on Lakeshore Drive, the city skyline a glittering, cold jewel to our left, the dark water of the lake to our right. "Walsh wants to meet," Luca said, his voice tight. "Agent Walsh, why?" "She is angry. She says you are evidence and we are tampering. She wants to pull you back in." I told her no. "She will not stop." I said, "She will try to grab me." "Let her try," Luca said. And then the world exploded. A massive black truck, the kind used for hauling gravel, slammed into our passenger side. It had come from a side street running a red light, moving at an impossible speed. The bulletproof glass held, but it spiderwebbed into 1,000 fractures. The impact threw me against my seatbelt, the lock biting into my chest. Luca wrestled with the wheel. The truck was still coming, pushing us, scraping against the side of our vehicle with a sound like a scream, trying to push us over the guardrail and into the freezing lake. "He's trying to push us," I yelled. "I see him," Luca shouted. He stomped on the gas, but the truck was too heavy. I looked back. The truck's windows were blacked out. Bratva, it had to be. "Ice!" I screamed. I saw a patch on the bridge ahead, a dark, slick sheen on the pavement where the wind from the lake froze the spray. Hit the ice and turn. "What you—" "Do it." Like you are pulling a bootlegger's turn. I was an ambulance driver in a Chicago winter. "Luca, hit the ice, hit the brake, and turn us toward the impact." He did not hesitate. He trusted me. The second our wheels hit the slick patch, Luca slammed the brakes and wrenched the wheel to the right. It was a perfect, terrifying, controlled skid. The sports utility vehicle spun, a 180-degree turn on the ice. The truck, which had been pushing forward, was suddenly met with the front end of our much heavier, reinforced vehicle. The physics of it was brutal. The truck driver was not expecting it. He tried to swerve, but he was on the ice too. His massive vehicle slid out of control and smashed headfirst into the concrete bridge abutment. We were facing the wrong way on Lakeshore Drive. The engine was steaming, but we were alive. Luca was breathing heavily. "You are," he said, "a terrifying woman." Then I saw the blood. "You are hit," I said, my voice all paramedic. "It is nothing," he said, wiping his face. It is not nothing. The side window had finally given way in the spin, and a shard of the bulletproof glass, thick as my thumb, had sliced his cheek, from his temple to his jaw. It was deep. "Drive," I ordered, unbuckling. "Get us off this bridge." He drove to the coffee warehouse, pulling into the garage, the door sealing us in. "Sit," I said, pointing to a stool. I grabbed the medical kit from the wall, the one he kept there. "Claire, it is fine." "It is not fine. It needs stitches, or you will have a scar worse than the one on your hand, and you will get an infection. Sit down." He sat. I cleaned the wound. My hands were steady, and he never flinched. Not once. He just watched me. His proximity was overwhelming. I was close enough to see the lines around his eyes, the flecks of gray at his temples. I still smelled the leather and spice, but now it was mixed with the sharp tang of his blood. "You saved my life," he said, his voice low. "We saved each other's lives," I said, threading a suture needle. "This is going to hurt. Hold still." I stitched the wound, 7 perfect, small sutures. My hands did not shake. When I was done, I put a sterile dressing over it. Our faces were inches apart. "Thank you," he whispered. I did not know if he was thanking me for the stitches or for the driving. I did not want to know. I just nodded, my throat tight. The next day, Agent Walsh found us. She did not come with sirens. She came alone. She was waiting for me at the warehouse, Naya Cortez at her side. "You are a fool, Miss Hartley," Walsh said, her voice clipped. "You could have been killed yesterday. He is a target, and now so are you." "I am a target anyway, Agent," I countered, "because one of your people is selling me. Agent Pike. He set me up." Walsh's face did not change, but her eyes hardened. "You have proof." "I have dispatch logs, timelines, and a near-death experience in a helicopter that could not fly. He is your leak." "We will look into it," Meng, she said. "You will do more than that," Naya Cortez said, bowing, stepping forward. "My client is prepared to testify, but not for you. Not for a system that is compromised. She will testify in open court, but she will do so with Mr. Santori's protection and with our legal oversight." Walsh looked like she had swallowed acid. A three-way cooperation. A federal witness, protected by the mob, testifying against the mob. It is insane. "It is the only way." I said, "You want Baranov. Luca wants Baranov. I want Baranov. And I want Pike. We all want the same thing. We just have to trust each other enough to get it." Walsh stared at me for a long time. "God help us all," she muttered. "Fine, we cooperate, for now. We just got a tip on a Bratva safe house. They are moving accounting data. If you are in, you are all in. My team hits it tonight." Luca and Naya were already there, waiting. Luca was not on the tactical team, but his people were. They were the ones who had found the safe house. The raid was fast. Walsh's FBI team went in, hard and loud. Luca's men had provided the layout, the exits. It was a perfect, seamless operation. They brought out 2 men in cuffs and 3 hard drives. Back at the warehouse, a federal tech specialist, one Walsh trusted, cracked the drives. It was all there. Shipping manifests, bank transfers. But it was the encrypted messages that made my blood run cold. They were messages to Oleg Baranov, from an internal federal server, from Pike. But there was another name, a code name. The messages from Pike were logistics, but the messages from this other person were strategy. They were giving Baranov high-level intelligence. The code name was Seraphim. Pike was not the head of the snake. He was just one fang. Seraphim was the one giving the orders. A mole, higher up than Pike. Much higher. We were not just fighting a gang, we were fighting a conspiracy. The cost of that raid became clear 2 days later. Baranov was not stupid. He knew he had been hit, and he knew it was a joint operation. He retaliated. It was not a direct attack. It was an ambush. 2 of Luca's men, his close bodyguards, the ones I'd seen at the cemetery, were killed. Their car was forced off a bridge. It was a message. That afternoon, Luca was gone. I found him at St. Michael's. It was not Sunday, but he was there. He was standing in front of my grave. He was not wearing his suit. He was in a simple dark shirt. His hand, the one with the scar, was wrapped in a bloody cloth. He had punched something. A wall, a mirror, a man. I did not know. The knuckles were split. He was holding a small, simple bouquet of white roses. I walked up to him. This time, I stood beside him. We looked at my name on the stone. "You are bleeding," I said, my voice soft. "They are dead," he said. His voice was raw. "Marco, Antonio. They had families. I'm so sorry, Luca." He bent, his wounded hand reaching to place the flowers on the grave. I saw him wince as his knuckles brushed the stone. My hand moved on its own. I reached out, my fingers brushing his, to take the bouquet from him, to spare him the small pain. "Let me," I whispered. He snatched his hand back, pulling the flowers away from my touch. He looked at me, his eyes blazing with a grief so profound it terrified me. "No," he said, his voice a gravelly whisper. Do not let my blood touch your flowers." He carefully, awkwardly, switched the roses to his other hand, his uninjured hand, and he placed them on the grave. He was protecting me, protecting my memory, protecting the last clean thing he had. He was keeping his violence separate from my innocence. We stood there as the sun began to set, the cold wind whipping around us. My burner phone, the one Walsh had given me, buzzed. It was a text, a new threat. It was from Baranov. He had sent it to Walsh, knowing she would pass it to us. He knew about the priest. He knew about the church. The message was simple. Give me the emergency medical technician ghost before the preliminary hearing, or I will burn St. Michael's to the ground, with the old man inside it. The threat was not an abstraction. Baranov's message changed everything. We were no longer just preparing for a trial. We were preparing for a siege. We moved Father Romano out of the rectory, a task that he argued against with surprising fire until Luca promised him he could hear confessions from our new location. We were not at the church. We were not at the coffee warehouse. We were in a half-renovated factory on the south side, a vast, cold space of exposed brick and steel beams. It was one of Luca's clean logistics properties. It was also, as of 48 hours ago, our fortress. And we were not alone. Luca had moved in the driver, the one man who had survived the Bratva truck attack on the bridge. His name was Andre, and he was terrified. He was our secondary witness, the one who could place Baranov at the scene, giving orders. He was hiding here with his wife and their 2 small children. The attack came on Sunday, not in the morning, not at the graveyard. It came at night, under the cover of the worst snowstorm of the year. The blizzard hit Chicago like a fist. The snow was not falling, it was a horizontal, blinding white wall. The wind howled, rattling the new, uncaulked windows of the factory. It was the perfect night for an assault. All city services were crippled. Response times would be non-existent. It started just after 8 o'clock. One of Luca's men stationed on the roof saw the first flicker of movement in the adjacent lot. 3 dark vans, engines off, rolling to a stop, their tires silent in the deep snow. They are here. Luca's voice was calm over the small radio he had given me. He was on the main floor. I was on the second with Andre and his family, and our go bags. How many? I whispered, my voice sticking in my dry throat. At least 12, maybe more. They are cutting the perimeter fence. I looked at Andre's wife. She was clutching her children, a boy and a girl, both under the age of 6. They were just shadows in the dark, their eyes wide. It is time, I said to her, my voice shifting into that paramedic calm. Just like we practiced. We are just taking a new way out. The first gunshots were a muffled pop, pop, pop from outside. The assault had begun. I grabbed the folded canvas gurney and a high-intensity flashlight. Stay behind me. Do not look down. Just hold on to my coat. I led them to the old fire escape. It was an exterior metal staircase, slick with ice. The wind tore at us, trying to rip us from the building. I shined the light down. It was a 20-foot drop to a snow-filled alley. I will go first, I said. Send the children down to me, one by one, then you. I helped Andre lower his son. The boy was crying silently. I caught him, setting him on the gurney, then the daughter. I strapped them in together. 2 small, terrified bodies. Oh, okay, Andre, your turn. I said. I looked up. His face was white. They are in the building, he whispered. I hear them. A new sound, the shattering of glass on the first floor, shouting in Russian. "Da, go," I yelled. I pushed Andre's wife onto the stairs and started lowering the gurney, hand over hand, the frozen metal burning my skin. Then a light, a red dot, a laser sight, dancing on the brick wall next to my head. A sniper. I dropped, pulling the gurney with me. The children were safe below, shielded by a dumpster. I pushed the family toward a gap in the alley fence. Run to the church. Father Romano is there. Go, go. Andre and his wife grabbed the gurney and fled into the white chaos. I was alone, behind a pile of frozen trash, with a sniper trying to find me. I looked up. The shot had come from the roof of the building opposite us. A flicker of movement. He was there. I pulled my medical bag close. My mind was racing. I could not stay here, but I could not move. I fumbled inside the bag. My fingers brushed a roll of medical tape. It was not white. It was the roll I used for marking contaminated gear, a bright, almost fluorescent, radioactive green. An idea, insane and desperate, formed. I unclipped the radio. "Luca, where are they?" "All over the main floor. They are trying to push up the central stairs. We have them bottlenecked." "They have a sniper. East building, roof." "I see him. We cannot get a clean shot." "I need a diversion," I whispered. "I need you to draw his fire." "What are you doing?" "I'm being a medic. Tell me when." I waited. The red dot was still sweeping the alley, looking for me. "Now!" Luca's voice yelled, and a burst of automatic fire erupted from the first-floor window, aimed not at the sniper, but at the vans in the street. The sniper's laser snapped to the window. In that instant, I moved. I ran, low and fast, out of the alley and across the street, into the lobby of the sniper's building. It was an abandoned textile mill. I did not take the stairs. I took the fire axe from the wall, and I went through the drywall into a maintenance shaft. I climbed, my hands and knees raw, following the pipework. I could hear the wind. I was getting close to the roof. I emerged from a vent, silent as the falling snow. He was there, 20 feet away. He was prone, his rifle trained on Luca's building, his back to me. He was wearing dark Bratva gear. I crept forward, and we had no idea. I was not going to shoot him. I was not a killer. I got within 5 feet. I took the roll of fluorescent tape. I ripped off a long piece, and I slapped it hard right between his shoulder blades. He roared, jumping up, thinking he had been shot or stabbed. He spun around, his rifle swinging. "What?" he yelled, his face a mask of confusion. He saw me, a woman in a thin coat, holding a roll of tape. "You have been marked," I said, my voice dead calm. He looked at me, utterly bewildered, and that was when Luca's man, the one who could not get a clean shot, finally saw a target. The bright green tape, a perfect X on the sniper's chest as he faced me, was unmissable. The shot was clean. The sniper just folded, dropping his rifle, a look of pure surprise on his face. I did not wait. I ran back, down the stairs this time, and across the street, back into the war zone. I found Luca on the main floor. He and 2 of his men were holding the central stairwell. Baranov was on the landing above them, in the half-shadow. Santori Baranov's voice was a booming roar, laced with a thick Russian accent. "You hide behind a woman. You are a coward. This is my city. I protect these people." "These people," Luca yelled back, I am reloading. "You sell poison to their children. You squeeze them for every dollar. I give them order. You give them sentiment." I saw my chance. While they were shouting, I slipped past the firefight and into a side office. The building's electrical plans were still on the wall. I knew what I had to do. They were running on generators, but they were also running a high-frequency jammer. It was why our phones were dead. I found the breaker box for the second floor. I grabbed a rubber mat from the floor, and I pulled the main. The entire second floor, including the jammer, went dead. I ran back out, a new sound, crying, children. It was Andre's family. They had not made it out. They had doubled back and were trapped in a small shipping office behind a rolling metal shutter. One of Baranov's men was in front of it, wiring a block of plastic explosive to the door. He was smiling. He was going to blow the door. And the family, to hell. I did not think. I did not aim. Not really. I drew the 9mm handgun Father Romano had given me. I did what he had taught me. Breathe out. Squeeze. The sound of my gun was different, singular. The man with the detonator screamed. Dropping the device as the bullet tore through his hand, he looked up, saw me, and raised his other hand. I fired again, center mass. He dropped. The world went silent for a second. I was breathing hard, the smell of my own gunpowder stinging my nose. I was shaking. Courage is not being without fear. It is being afraid and still carrying the gurney. I was terrified, but I was still moving. The sudden silence was broken by new sirens. This time, they were not a threat. They were the cavalry. The factory's main bay doors exploded inward, and the black sports utility vehicles of the FBI flooded the space. Agent Catherine Walsh was in the lead, in full tactical gear, her weapon raised. FBI, drop your weapons, drop them now. The Bratva, caught between Luca's men on the stairs and Walsh's team at the door, had no choice. One by one, 12 men threw down their guns. It was over. Walsh's team was cuffing them. And then I saw him, Agent Pike. He was not with Walsh's team. He had come in with the Bratva. He was wearing their gear. He had been here all along, directing their assault. He saw me. He saw Walsh. He saw his entire life ending. He raised his gun. He was not aiming at Walsh. He was aiming at me. "Claire!" Luca yelled, but he was too far away. Pike's finger tightened on the trigger. I did not have time to shoot. I did not even have time to be scared. I had one thing in my hand. I had pulled it from my medic bag when I was on the roof. An auto-injector, epinephrine, adrenaline. I lunged. I stabbed the needle, hard, through his glove, through his skin, deep into the muscle of his wrist. He screamed, a high, thin sound, as the full dose of adrenaline hit his system and his hand cramped in an agonizing, involuntary spasm. His gun clattered to the floor. He stared at his hand, then at me. Luca was there in a second, and he had his own gun, the muzzle pressed against Pike's temple. His eyes were not tired. They were black with a rage so pure it was terrifying. He was going to kill him. He was going to execute him. Right here. For Marco. For Antonio. For all of it. "No!" I shouted. Luca's hand tensed. "He tried to kill you," Luca growled. "And he is the only one who can tell us who Seraphim is," I yelled. "We need him alive. Do not kill him. Luca, not like this. Choose." He looked at me. He looked at the trembling, hyperventilating Pike. He was at war with himself, the mob boss versus the man I was starting to know. He lowered the gun. He stepped back. "Walsh," he bellowed. "Your traitor is here. Cuff him." I let out a breath I did not know I was holding. And that was when the bullet hit him. It was not Pike. It was Baranov. He was on the catwalk above us, a pistol in his hand. He had not been caught. Luca grunted, a short, sharp exhalation of pain. He staggered, his hand flying to his neck. "Luca!" I screamed. He fell. He was gushing blood. The bullet had grazed his neck, high up, near the carotid. It was not a direct hit, but it had torn something. He was choking. I could hear the high-pitched whistling sound, a compromised airway. I was on him in a second, my medic bag flying open. "Pressure hold this!" I yelled at one of his men, shoving a stack of gauze at the wound. He was drowning in his own blood. I could not intubate here. I had seconds. I tilted his head back. I felt for the cricothyroid membrane in his throat. My fingers, practiced from 1,000 training dummies and a dozen real-life emergencies, found the small, soft divot in his windpipe. "I need a straw," I yelled at no one. "A metal straw now." One of his men, the one not holding the pressure, looked at me, confused. "What?" I saw it. On the floor. A stainless steel water bottle, dropped by one of the Bratva. It had a metal straw. I grabbed it. I wiped the tip on my coat. I said a silent prayer. "Hold him," I commanded. I took my scalpel from the kit. One quick, precise, vertical cut. I spread the tissue. And I inserted the metal straw, a clean, perfect, horrifying insertion, directly into his windpipe. A field cricothyrotomy. He coughed, a spray of blood, and then he took a deep, shuddering, whistling breath. Through the straw, he was breathing. He was alive. I saw Baranov, on the catwalk, staring in horror. He had just watched a ghost save a mob boss with a drinking straw. He turned to run. "No, you do not," I growled. I left Luca in the care of his men. I grabbed a single tourniquet from my bag, and I ran. I chased him, up the spiral metal staircase. He was big, but I was faster. He was a brute. I was a paramedic. I knew how the body worked. He was at the top, on the roof, trying to get to a fire escape. The snow was a blizzard. I caught him. I did not shoot him. I did not stab him. I tackled his legs. I was a dead weight. He stumbled. As he fell, I wrapped the tourniquet high and tight around his right thigh, and I cranked the windlass. I turned it and turned it and turned it. I turned it again and again. A tourniquet, when applied correctly, is not just uncomfortable, it is agonizing. It cuts off all blood flow. It crushes the muscle and the nerve. Baranov screamed, a raw, guttural sound of pure, unadulterated pain. He clawed at his leg, but he could not move. He was a 250-pound man, a killer, and he was completely, utterly incapacitated by a 120-pound woman and a strip of nylon. I stood over him, my chest heaving. Luca was there, and he had walked up the stairs, one hand on his neck, holding the straw, the other holding his gun. He was pale, but he was alive. He looked at Baranov, writhing and screaming in the snow. He raised his gun. This was it, justice, vengeance. He killed Marco, Luca whispered, his voice a bubbling rasp through the straw. He killed Antonio. He thumbed the hammer back. He did, I said, my voice cutting through the wind, and you will honor them by letting him rot in a federal prison. You will not honor them by becoming a murderer in a snowstorm. We need him alive. Luca, justice needs a witness. He looked at Baranov. He looked at me. He lowered the gun. Justice, he rasped. I watched him, and in that moment, the entire world shifted. We heard Walsh's voice from below. We found it, my God, we found it all. The Seraphim files. It was Pike. He was feeding intel to a prosecutor, a United States attorney. The whole scheme, the money laundering, the betrayal, it was all there. I was exhausted. I leaned against a vent, my legs weak. As I did, something small and white and dry fell from my coat pocket. It was a single, preserved white rose petal, one I must have pocketed from the cemetery, from my own grave. It tumbled in the wind, a tiny piece of my old life, and it landed on the snow. Inches from Oleg Baranov's boot, the graveyard had come to the battlefield, and we had all, somehow, survived. The snow in the alley was stained with blood, but the world inside the factory was, for the first time in months, quiet. I had stabilized Luca, my hands working on autopilot, applying a proper sterile dressing over the field cricothyrotomy. Walsh's tactical medics, seeing what I had done, just nodded, their faces grim with professional respect. They took him and Baranov and the whimpering, adrenaline-sick Agent Pike, and they were gone. The dawn broke over Chicago, a temporary, fragile peace. The storm had passed, leaving the city muffled in white, but the media had caught the scent. The story was too big, too insane to be contained. A massive joint operation, the arrest of Oleg Baranov, the betrayal of a decorated federal agent, the indictment of a United States attorney, the one Pike had named as his handler in a desperate, panicked confession. The name Seraphim, the ambitious prosecutor, was suddenly all over the news. The bribery lists found on the hard drives were sealed by a federal judge, but the rumors were deafening. The first act of our new, strange peace was a funeral. Little Italy did not have a parade. It had a vigil. 2 days after the factory, the entire neighborhood gathered outside St. Michael's, which Baranov had threatened but never touched. They came for Marco and Antonio, the 2 bodyguards who had been killed. The street was closed. Hundreds of people stood in the cold, their breath fogging in the air, holding small white candles. I stood in the shadows of the rectory, next to Father Romano. Luca was not there. He was in a secure wing of County General, the same hospital where I had once worked, recovering from surgery to repair his throat. I watched as the families, the widows, were presented with flowers. I saw the men from the restaurant, the old man whose breathing I had saved. He was there, his hat in his hand. This was the community Luca protected. This was the family he had built. It was complicated, and it was real. I finally understood what he was fighting for. It was not just territory. It was this. The negotiation took place 3 days later. It was not in a federal building. It was not in a warehouse. At Naya Cortez's insistence, we met in the sterile, neutral territory of her law office. Agent Catherine Walsh sat at one side of the massive mahogany table, her face a mask of ironclad control. I sat at the other with Naya. Luca sat at the head of the table. He had a thick white bandage on his neck. He could not speak above a hoarse whisper. His lawyer, Naya, did the talking for him. "Let us be clear," Naya began, her voice sharp. "My client, Miss Hartley, is not a witness in your custody. She is a cooperating citizen who was nearly killed by your systemic failure. She will testify." Walsh nodded, her eyes on me. "We appreciate that." "She will testify," Naya continued, "in open court, and she will not, under any circumstances, be returning to the witness security program. That is non-negotiable." Walsh's eye twitched. "She needs protection. Baranov's organization is not entirely gone." "She will have protection," Luca whispered. His voice was a raw, gravelly sound that sent a shiver through me. "My protection." "We cannot have a federal witness under the protection of a known organized crime figure," Walsh said, her voice dripping with ice. "Then we have a problem," Naya said, "because Miss Hartley will not be protected by the organization that employed Agent Pike, the man who set her up, and Seraphim, the man who tried to have her killed. Your system is broken. Agent Walsh, we are offering a new one." The document they signed was a memorandum of agreement. It was, as Naya called it, a masterpiece of legal gray areas. I would testify. The FBI would provide a visible, official security detail, but my location, my safety, my day-to-day life would be managed by a private security force, vetted and funded by Luca. It was mutual oversight. We would be watching the federal agents, and they would be watching us. In return, Luca provided his own package, financial data, shipping logs, everything he had on the Bratva, and, in a move that stunned Walsh, a detailed accounting of his own gray market logistics, with a plan to move them into full, taxable legitimacy within 2 years. He was cutting ties with the violent parts of his past, not just for me, but for himself. Walsh looked at the data, then at Luca. "You are giving this up." "I am evolving," Luca rasped. Pike confessed. Walsh said, looking at me. "He gave us everything. He confirmed your timeline. He set you up. And he gave us the deputy regional agent." My heart stopped. "Wait, I thought the prosecutor was Seraphim." Walsh shook her head. "The prosecutor was a snake, yes. He was taking bribes, directing Pike, but he was not Seraphim. Seraphim was the one inside the FBI, the deputy regional agent, Pike's direct superior. He was the one who sent the helicopter for you in Michigan. He was the one feeding Baranov our high-level tactics. We arrested him this morning. Your testimony, Miss Hartley, has done more than just take down a gang. You've exposed a cancer in my own house." She looked, for the first time, tired. "The system had a hole. You found it. We are grateful." With the legalities settled, the healing began. It was not easy. The first 2 weeks, I could not sleep. I would jolt awake. The smell of gunpowder in my nose, the sound of the sniper's rifle, the feel of Luca's blood on my hands. I went back to work. Not at my old 911 job. I could not. I was still, officially, a ghost. Instead, I went to the Santori Community Clinic, the one Luca funded. It was a small, clean place in the heart of Little Italy. I volunteered. I treated children with the flu, old men with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, people who could not or would not go to a city hospital. My hands, which had been shaking, became steady again, the simple, tactile work of medicine, the act of applying a bandage, of listening to a heartbeat. It was a balm. It was grounding. When the night terrors came, I would sit on the floor of my new, secure apartment, and I would do the grounding techniques I taught my patients. I would name 5 things I could see, the record player Luca had given me, the stack of medical journals, the heavy, locked, secure door, 4 things I could feel, the wooden floor, the soft wool of my blanket, the pulse in my own wrist. I was alive. I was here. Luca was healing, too. His throat scarred over. His voice returned, though it was permanently rougher, a lower, quieter version of what it had been. But his nightmares were different from mine. He had the nightmares of a man who had given orders. He had the rage of a man who had lost his people. One night, he was in my apartment, in the small kitchen, pacing. He was agitated, talking about a shipment, a problem with the new clean logistics. "He's trying to cheat me," he said, his hands clenched into fists. "After everything, he thinks he can—" "Luca," I said, putting my hand on his arm. His muscle was tense, hard as iron. "Breathe." "I am breathing," he growled. "No," I said, stepping in front of him. "You are not. You are surviving. Breathe with me, like I taught you." I had shown him, half as a joke, the box breathing technique we teach to calm panic patients. Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4. He looked at me, his eyes dark, but he did it. He stood in my kitchen, this powerful, feared man, and he inhaled, his chest rising. He held it. He exhaled, the sound a long, slow sigh. He held it. We stood there for a full minute, just breathing in a box, his shoulders relaxed, his hands unclenched. "Better?" I asked. He nodded. He reached out, his hand, the one with the scar, and he touched the bandage on his own throat. "Who," he whispered, "is saving whom?" "Claire." The line was gone. The boundary between mob boss and witness, protector and protected, it had vanished. It was just us. We ate chicken soup. I made it. He ate it like he had not tasted real food in 20 years. We listened to an old Frank Sinatra record on the turntable. The music was soft, nostalgic, and unbelievably normal. "I have rules," I said, as the music played. He looked up from his soup. "Okay. Rule 1, no lying, not to me, not ever. I have lived as a lie for too long. I want the truth, even if it is ugly." He nodded. "The truth?" "Rule 2, you do not force me. You do not coerce me. You do not protect me into a corner. I have my own voice. I have my own will. I keep my right to say no." "You will always have that right," he said, his voice firm. "Rule 3, I said, my voice softer. No blood on my floor. I know who you are. Luca, I know what you have done. I accept it. But I am a medic. My home is a clean space. The violence, it stays outside. In this apartment, we heal." He looked at me for a long time. He got up from the table. He walked to the kitchen sink. He rinsed his bowl. He put it in the dishwasher. He turned and faced me. "No lies," he said. "Your choice. And no blood, I swear." The trials were fast, with Pike and Baranov's full confessions. The cases were airtight. Baranov and his crew pleaded guilty, facing decades in a federal supermax prison. The ambitious prosecutor, the first Seraphim, was indicted. His career over, his future a cage. Agent Pike, for betraying his badge and his country, received a life sentence, no parole. In the community, things changed. The first checks from the Marco and Antonio Memorial Scholarship Fund were given to 2 local kids, their full college tuition paid, and outside St. Michael's, next to the rectory, a new, small, heated booth was installed. It was a naloxone and fentanyl decontamination station. It was practical. It was kind. It was Luca. And then it was Sunday. The first Sunday after the trials, I woke up and Luca was already dressed. In his dark suit, he was holding a bouquet, white roses. "You are still going?" I asked. He nodded. "A promise is a promise." "Wait," I said. I pulled on my coat. We drove to St. Michael's together. The air was cold, but the sun was bright. The snow had melted. He walked to the headstone, my headstone. I walked with him. He looked at the polished granite. Claire Hartley, beloved daughter. He bent and he placed the white roses at the base. He stayed there, kneeling, for a long time. I did not rush him. Then he whispered, so low I almost did not hear it. He was not talking to me. He was talking to the stone. "Thank you," he said, "for the forgiveness." He meant for Marco, for Antonio, for not letting him kill Pike, for not letting him kill Baranov, for showing him another way. I reached into my own pocket. I had stopped at the small floral cart outside the church. I pulled out a small, green, fragrant sprig. I bent down next to him, and I placed the sprig of rosemary among the white roses. "What is that?" he whispered. "Rosemary," I said, "for remembrance, so we never forget." He looked at me, the sun in his eyes. He took my hand, his scarred, warm hand closing around mine, and we walked out of the graveyard together. My name, Claire Hartley, was spoken in a federal courtroom for 5 consecutive days. I sat on the witness stand, and the life I had lost was laid bare for the jury. The ambulance, the parking garage, the flash of my camera, the cabin in Michigan, the fake helicopter, the factory. I told them everything. I was not a ghost anymore. I was a voice, and I was loud. The jury was out for less than 6 hours. The verdicts were a clean sweep. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Oleg Baranov, his men, the U.S. attorney, all of them. The media went insane. They called me the ghost paramedic. They tried to spin my story into a romance, a sensationalist headline about a mob boss and a witness. They camped outside my apartment. I refused every interview. I did not give them a single word. My life was not a headline. It was mine. While the media was focused on me, Luca was moving. He called a press conference. He stood there, the white bandage on his neck now replaced by a thin, red scar. He did not whisper. He spoke, his new, rough voice carrying a weight that silenced the room. He announced he was dissolving 2 of his largest holding companies. He was selling his non-traditional assets. He was, in his words, reinvesting. He was pouring millions of dollars into clean logistics, and in a move that shocked the city. A massive project to build affordable, low-income housing in his neighborhood. I watched it on the television, from my apartment. Agent Catherine Walsh was standing in the back of the press conference, her arms folded, her face unreadable. She was not there as a federal agent. She was there as an observer. She was watching a man she had once tried to arrest, a man who had helped her clean her own house, and I saw on her face a look I had never seen before. It was not anger. It was not suspicion. It was a kind of hard, pragmatic respect. A week later, I got a call from a secure line, my brother. Evan's ship had docked at the naval station in Norfolk for 48 hours. Luca had arranged it, a private jet, a no-questions-asked flight plan. I stood on the deck of the massive aircraft carrier, the wind whipping my hair. He was in his white uniform. He looked older, stronger. He saw me. His face crumpled. "Claire." I ran. We held on to each other, right there on the flight deck, and we both just wept. He was holding me so tight I could barely breathe. "I thought you were dead," he whispered into my hair. I grieved you, Claire." "I'm so sorry. Evan," I cried. "I'm so sorry. I could not tell you." He pulled back, his hands on my shoulders. He looked at my face, my eyes, as if to make sure I was real. He saw the new lines of exhaustion, the shadows. "Who did this to you?" he asked, his voice suddenly hard. "It is complicated," I said, and I laughed, a wet, broken sound. He looked around at the 2 stoic men in dark suits who had escorted me. "This is your life now." "It is the life that kept me alive," I said softly. He looked at me for a long time. Then he pulled me in again. A gentle hug this time. "It does not matter," he said, his voice thick. "You are alive. That is enough. That is everything." I flew back to Chicago that night, and I felt that for the first time like a whole person. I had to come to terms with the gray. The world was not black and white. It was not good guys and bad guys. I was an emergency medical technician. I was trained to see trauma, to fix what was broken, but this was different. I was in love with Luca Santori. I was in love with a man who had, certainly, ordered men to their deaths, who had built an empire on foundations I did not want to look at too closely. The moral ambiguity of it should have suffocated me. But then I would remember. I would remember the parking garage. My memory of it had changed. I used to remember the man grabbing my arm in warning. But now, I remembered the other part. I had been shaking, my hands, which I needed to be steady, were trembling with terror, and his hand, his hot, scarred hand, had closed on my forearm, and it had not been just a warning, it had been an anchor. In his own moment of dying, he had felt my fear, and he had, in the only way he knew how, tried to hold me steady. That was the man I loved, the man who ordered violence, and the man who held my arm to stop my shaking, the man who brought flowers to an empty grave. We made new promises, not of forever, but of now. If you ever slip back, Luca. I told him one night, as we listened to the Sinatra record, if you ever go back to the man who would have killed Pike in that factory. What? He asked, his voice quiet. I will be the one who turns on the siren, I said. I will be the one who comes for you. I am a medic. I will not watch you bleed out. He nodded, accepting this. And if you ever want to leave, he said, his hand covering mine, if this life, if I become too much, I will not stop you. I will not hold you. I will hold the door for you. Claire, you will always have your right to say no. It was not a cage. It was freedom, wrapped in a bond I could not explain. The last Sunday of the month, it rained, a cold, gentle, cleansing rain. I woke, and he was there, in his suit, holding the white roses. It is raining, I said. They will not mind, he said. We went together. We were the only two people in St. Michael's Cemetery. The grass was wet. The air smelled of damp earth. We stood in front of the headstone, the one that still bore my name. He bent and placed the white roses. I bent and placed my sprig of rosemary, for remembrance. Then I took one more thing from my coat. It was a small, rolled, sterile gauze bandage, the kind I used every single day at the clinic. I tucked it between the roses and the rosemary. Luca looked at it. He looked at me. Life, I said, touching the roses. Memory, I added, touching the rosemary. And healing. I tapped the bandage. It is all part of it. He reached out and took my hand. We stood there in the rain, looking at the monument to a life that was not over, a life that was just beginning. I thought that was the end. I thought we had closed the loop. I was wrong. When we returned to the apartment, there was a letter. It had been slipped under the door, not mailed, hand-delivered. It was on thick, expensive, federal government cream cardstock. My name was written on the front in elegant, precise cursive. I opened it. Luca watched me, his face suddenly tense. The note was short. Miss Hartley, your testimony was admirable. You exposed a deep corruption. But you, and Agent Walsh, have the wrong seraphim. The deputy agent was a fool, but he was not the head. He was a pawn, just like Pike. The real seraphim, the one who truly betrayed you, is still in place. If you want the real truth, meet me, alone. My blood went cold. I looked at the signature. It was not a name I knew. It was not the deputy agent. It was a name I had seen on the legal briefs, at the negotiation. It was the name of Agent Catherine Walsh's chief legal counsel, the quiet man who had been in the room the entire time. Someone in the Department of Justice, someone far higher than a regional agent, had switched the files. They had fed us a fake seraphim to protect the real one. I looked up at Luca. He had seen my face. He already knew. The war was not over. It had just gone quiet. I walked to my desk. I opened my journal. The bells from St. Michael's began to toll, the sound carrying on the wet air. I wrote one last line. Nobody can bury someone who still has work to do. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I am so glad we got to share it with you. I am curious. Where in the world are you listening from? Let me know in the comments. I would love to connect and hear your thoughts on Claire and Luca's journey. Your support means everything. Please. If you enjoyed this, consider subscribing to our channel, Mafia Boss Stories, and give this video a like. And if you really want to help us grow, hit that hype button so this story can be heard by even more people. Thank you again for being here.